The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here along with Dan Rylance, and I think it's only fitting that as we bring 2007 to a close and start in with 2008 that we wanted to kind of do a special show. Last week's show was a little special because we did a 2007 year in review, and now we're going to kind of do a year in review and a look ahead at 08 with two folks who have been here before, executive editor of the Oshkosh Northwestern, Stu Rieckman, and editorial page editor, and the guy who oversees all those online discussion boards at the Northwestern,
Right.
Alex Hummel. So thanks to both of you for being here.
Thank you.
It's you know, you guys have been on, I think, a number of times in the past, and it's just always a fun show for us to have you guys on. So as I mentioned, it's natural to look ahead to 08, but we kind of, before we can do that, we have to sort of look backwards and look at 07. And certainly this year was filled with a lot of news, and a lot of it that occurred right here in this very building, maybe at the other end of the hall, but it happened here. So, you know, I mean, we've seen a lot of upheaval in the last year, a lot of upheaval here at City Hall, and that is sort of culminating in a city manager search that the city is about to undertake, and you guys have been pretty outspoken about where you think that should go and how it should start. So you want to just sort of fill our viewers in on what the Northwestern's position is on it?
Well, I think that at the outset, when they were determining the route they're going to go to for city manager, there was a period of time there that we were supportive of getting a referendum out there on the mayor-alderman form of government. I think Councilmember Palmieri had a resolution that we supported because we thought at that time it was made sense to get the question resolved. That didn't have support from the rest of the council. Shortly thereafter, two council members came forward looking for a advisory referendum, which I believe the genesis was, you know, on your show we had discussed it,
Yep.
and that didn't gain any popular support. So subsequently, the vestiges of the Cord group met to see if they could get a petition drive going for direct legislation. Unable to muster a lot of support for that. A lot of, you know, my take on it was there just wasn't an overriding enthusiasm for it. So from that background, it looks like the city council is determined to go ahead with the city manager search. And they ditched the interim city manager search, and now they've directed the acting city manager, Mr. Fitzpatrick, to put together a request for proposals for an executive search. And I think that is the route to go at this point. I don't see any reason not to move forward.
Alex?
I guess I echo the thoughts, you know, and that was a pretty good synopsis of the steps that have been taken so far and what's going to be coming at us relatively soon. Probably in mid-January we'll have an executive search firm, or at least a pool of them, selected, and from there we'll continue the search for a new city manager.
I think as you look ahead to 2008, I think that the community needs to be aware that this is not going to be a bargain basement process. It's not like going to Super Walmart and picking one off the shelves. You're going to have some cost associated with an executive recruitment company. It is not uncommon for a position of this nature to pay moving expenses to the community. It's not uncommon to provide temporary housing allowance for an executive moving in. And I think this community needs to get over the idea that we can do this on the cheap. It's going to cost some money, but if it's done properly, it's an investment that's going to pay for itself many times over, I believe.
Another thing I think too that's important for the community to realize is the opportunity that's before it. There's sort of been an either-or discussion in Oshkosh right now about how to go about seeking a city manager. Should the city council just do it? Should it hire an executive firm and under the impression that this firm will just, fly with it? Shouldn't citizens do this search too? And I guess once again I come back to something that the community needs to see the opportunity before it. It all can happen, and it all should happen. The city council, there's nothing preventing them tomorrow from stepping forward and saying, citizens are going to be an integral part of this selection process. We need to be a council. We need to step forward and make sure that we've got a firm in place that we feel confident about, and that we're the ones that are going to make the ultimate decision. But there's nothing preventing a city council from saying, we're going to have a citizen advisory panel join us or help form the final decision. I think that'd be a great thing, and I don't think there's anything stopping it from happening.
Well, certainly we want to talk about that firm and what it should look like in the process that maybe it should take. But stepping back to the referendum in the ideas there, what do you guys think happened? Because we've heard cries for years. I've been a part of those cries that we need to have a change of government in this community. I think my feelings on that have changed a little bit. I still think some change is needed, but I guess I've become more of the opinion that it doesn't matter so much what form of government we have, as long as we have good, accountable, true leaders. Who can if you've got leaders, they can function in any kind of environment, and a city will thrive. But we've heard a lot of cries for change, and yet the attempts at referendums haven't really gotten too far, and when they have gotten on the ballot, they've failed. What's your perception of why this has happened?
I think that people who pay close attention to city government, yourself, the newspaper, people that are involved with the civic lifeblood of the community, are more in tune with the form as opposed to the function. I think the average Oshkosh resident is more concerned about what's my tax bill look like, who's picking up my garbage, is the recycling taken care of, my street plowed. And if those jobs are being done, by and large, the average person in the community is not going to get motivated to get out, pound the sidewalks, knock on doors to get signatures on a petition. And I think, by and large, the city operates smoothly, which is a tribute to Dick Wallach. The city runs as smoothly as it does because Dick knew how to administer city services. And I think the next step, the next logical evolutionary step, is to take a look at that economic development component, which is very complex. And I think the average person in town is willing to say, show me that you can get the job done. And I really think there's a reservoir of goodwill in the community about the city manager form of government. And I think that there just isn't the necessity to change the form of government, or the feel that there's a necessity to change the form of government.
What I find interesting in this community is very often reform to change government or whatever comes from a civic group. In this city, there doesn't seem to be any. Just for example, the League of Women Voters in another city might be interested in a change of government. They're interested in county government, but they're very strong supporters of the chamber. Progress Oshkosh, which started, and I don't know where it's at now. So it's up to individuals, and the council keeps saying, well, we don't want to do it. Just go. It's easy to go out and collect 3,200 signatures. Well, it's damn hard to collect 3,200 signatures.
And it should be.
It should be.
It should be.
I grant it. But it's solely based on individuals. There is no group. Labor. So the reform aspects that happen in other referendums at other times in our history seems to be absent here.
Yeah. A perfect example is Progress Oshkosh. When they had it on their agenda to reduce the size of county government, they really, really got the volunteers out and worked hard and got the signatures they needed. And if you remember, there was some sort of technical flaw in the filing of the paper that it didn't get accepted or something like that. But they were motivated, and they got out, and they were working events, and they were very visible. And so they did get signatures on the petition. Now, you know, when the group calls a meeting to take the temperature and see what the level of interest is, you get 25 people show up at the public library, and there's not an overriding enthusiasm or passion for
consensus
it, or consensus on what it
exactly
should look like and where it should go. You know, you can interpret that to mean that there isn't an overriding interest in changing the form of government.
Now,
If there was, that meeting would have been packed. There would have been 100 people there, not 25.
Is there overriding support, you know, contrary to that, for a city manager form of government? No,
Probably not.
but there's not overriding passion about it either way, really, and I think that's where we are.
You know, if you could do a scientific survey, do random sampling, call people at home and say, what's the form of government Oshkosh has? They'd say, well, I know we have a mayor, and I know we have a city manager,
Right.
and we've got a council, so
What's
it must
wrong?
be a mayor, manager, council form of government.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know, the apathy even trickles down to the budget. I mean, look at on the blogs, we hear, I think, probably the same people complaining about the wages, for example, and the benefits in particular that the city employees get. And yet when that budget came up at the council for, you know, discussion from the public, no one showed up. No one had any concerns about it, apparently. Not enough that they, you know, came through the doors of City Hall to talk about it.
And I'm,
So-
you know, I'm not, statistically speaking, and I've studied these numbers for quite a number of years as a reporter and as an editorial page editor. Oshkosh is, by most watching groups' account around the state of Wisconsin, a fairly frugal community when it comes to its budget. And I know that probably rubs people watching the show out there the wrong way who cannot believe it. But I think that's a testament sort of to our insular nature at times. You know, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the Eau Claires and the La Crosses and the Janesvilles, there really, to be quite honest, across Wisconsin aren't a lot of eye-popping, whoa, what's going on there statistics. Most communities are pretty fair with their dollar, and sure, there are times when everybody gets a little upset about the application of it, but relatively speaking, there just isn't that passion or anger or enthusiasm, I guess, for this
Yeah.
kind of issue.
So, city manager search, as we said at the outset, is about to be undertaken here, and they are going to look for a professional search firm. I think some people, and I've read this on the blogs, some people are of the definite mindset that this is already pretty much a done deal and everything else, any RFPs is just formality, that this contract for the search firm is going to go to the firm run by Steve Hentz and former city manager Bill Free. I have some feelings on that. I don't know that that's so much a done deal. I don't know that that's who it's going to go to. But do you guys have some feeling on it?
Well, I mean, my question, I guess, would be to the people who are concerned about that is what's the criteria going to be? Anybody? No? I mean, usually the criteria for bidding is what? Cost, expertise, usually cost, a little bit more cost. I mean, that's been sort of the tradition here, that we've been very, you know, concerned about the cost of something. So if that's going to be one of the main criteria, and I've already heard the councilors on the city council talking about, you know, quoting prices that they feel are going to be coming in, that seems to be the big factor, you know.
Well,
Isn't it going to be a sort of automatic, I guess, depending on, you know, who gets the lowest bid?
fact of the matter is that you're not required to ask for bids on professional
That's
services. Okay? City manager could go out and recommend a firm, and the city council could hire the firm without taking the first bid. So the fact that they've asked for requests for proposals and asked for bids,
Right.
I think is going to step beyond what they'd be required to do. I will tell you this, that, you know, I've had conversations with Bill Free, and Alex and I were at a Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs meeting, and Bill Free said, we'll do it for $10,000. First conversation with me when I was interviewing him for a column, he says, Stu, we'd do it for $1. But Denise won't let me. Denise is one of the partners.
Okay.
And he's coming from the perspective that he has a lot of love for the city, and he's a firm advocate of the city manager form of government. He wants to see the form of government work, and he knows what it takes to put an individual in to make the form of government works. They are willing to stake their reputation as a firm on hiring that the council will hire the right person here. You know, is it a done deal? I think the council is going to wrestle with the proposals that come in, because there is some animus towards, you know, Steve Hentz and Bill Free, and they're going to wrestle with that. I'd be shocked if they didn't have the low bid. Now, do you hire them because they've got the low bid, or do you hire them because they're the best firm? That's the question the council is going to wrestle with.
There's another variable, and the acting city manager, Fitzpatrick, explained this, that you can get, you know, a Cadillac service or a Pinto service depending on what other additional things you want.
Right.
And there's this leadership component that Councilman Bain keeps bringing up, that this could be part of what this firm would do. They not only would search for a new city manager, but they would line up some forms to get the city involved. So you could ask for a lot of other things in addition to just the search, and that might, you know, eliminate some people and include other people. I don't know.
Well, and also Fitzpatrick, when he was here, he seemed to be leaning toward another firm. You know, he didn't name a firm, he doesn't
Right.
have one in mind, but he seemed to be looking outside our own backyard. And I think maybe there's some merit in that. And I certainly have no, you know, problem with Steve Hentz or with Bill Free. I've seen the job that they've done in other communities when I was covering those local governments from a journalism standpoint, and you know, I thought that they did a fine job. But maybe there's something to be said for getting someone who is outside our backyard, who can maybe think outside the box a little bit, and who doesn't necessarily know the lay of the land with such great familiarity.
I think
You know?
the encouraging thing right out of the chute here is that we've already got an acting city manager who's aware of that. We've got a council that's talking about having multiple pieces and moving parts to this process, including citizen involvement, which is great. You know, I don't think there's a lot to get down on the mouth about so far. It's going kind of good, and in about a month's time, we're probably going to have a pretty good feel for how successful it is or isn't going. So it's pretty responsive, I think.
Yeah. Well, Stu, you had mentioned about the cost, and that this you know, is not going to come cheaply, and you were talking about relocation expenses and all those kinds of things. Do you, either one of you, think that the fact that there is still some discussion amongst small sectors in the community about a change of government at some point, do you think that that factors into this at all, that that's anything for a prospective candidate to really be concerned about? And if so, should they be paid a little extra money for that concern?
Well, you know, that's an interesting concept, and I think that during the negotiations, I think if there's one candidate that's head and shoulders above the other and has got a background that's attractive to Oshkosh, I think the negotiations could go down that route, and the right candidate might have some leverage to say, look at, you know, you may have a referendum that cost me my job. I want 18 months buyout on my contract should that happen. So I think that's a possibility, and I think that's something the council is going to have to factor into the process of hiring a new city manager.
Okay. Good.
I think what we ought to do is just schedule the referendum every 2 years and be done with it. You know, just put it on. Just, you know, every 2 years, put it on the ballot and get over with.
Could you put that on the ballot for us?
I mean, it's cyclical.
Yeah.
You know, look at how many times
Yeah.
the city's voted on the referendum since 1950. You know, and it pops up every 4 years. Let's just put it on the ballot as a permanent thing, and you vote for your city councilman, you vote on the referendum, and you go forward with it.
You think then, since you want it to be automatic, that the council should put it on?
I'm being facetious.
I know,
Sure.
I know.
He was so eager to
I had
say
to throw that out
that.
there as well.
Yeah.
You know?
I'd make a prediction. I think there may be a referendum on the ballot in November, and I think the November ballot has the greatest chance of passing with high turnout. But that's just me.
I think there's going to be a very interesting sort of public temperature taking on this issue. If the city council moves forward with a quality city manager search that the public feels that they've been a part of and that there's confidence building behind, I think any push for a referendum, even if it's heartfelt and passionate, will be interpreted by many people as, hey, now wait a second here. You know, we're trying to get going here. And this whole manager versus mayor issue is not all that important to us. We just want to get Oshkosh moving forward. Don't blow up the train tracks, please.
See, if you get the right city manager hired, the first thing I'm going to do is get out into the community and get to know the community and get to know the various groups And if it's a dynamic person with leadership qualities, they're going to win a lot of people over. People are going to be willing to say, let's give it a chance. Let's see what happens. And I think you have to have that caliber of candidate hired to make sure that they're able to solidify the fact that the city manager form of government can and will work because of this individual.
And I also think the city manager that might be best for Oshkosh has never seen before.
Right.
The style,
Right.
the kind of quality and skill and character they're going to bring to the. It's just you could really bring somebody in there with a whole different game and a whole different way of dealing with the public, and that might be a very good thing for the community.
But so much of that, I think you're right, but so much of that hinges on what this council allows that city manager to do. You know, we've seen a council lately that I think has a tendency to kind of want to micromanage some things.
Well, look, here's the reason that happened is because Dick Wallink's style was to acquiesce to the city council. Oftentimes at a meeting, you would hear him say, whatever the council wants. Let me know what you want to do, and we'll get that prepared for you, whatever you want. And you see, Mr. Fitzpatrick that's not his approach. He provides some leadership and some guidance and some direction to the council, and the council is doing less of that testing and wanting to micromanage because Mr. Fitzpatrick is ready to give them guidance and tell them, you know, that's not appropriate, that might not work, here's something else you should think of. And so you're seeing a different style come into play, and the council reacts differently to that style than they did to Mr. Wallink's style. Now, I'm not saying that Mr. Wallink's style was wrong, it was different. And the council reacted to that style differently than they do to Mr. Fitzpatrick. Now, you have city manager X get hired, and if they have a particular leadership style that's about building coalitions and building consensus, I think you're going to see the council want to let the city manager take the lead. Provide some guidance, provide some vision, but you do your job.
Is the acting city manager a viable candidate to be city manager?
That's interesting. You know, I know you had him on your show, and I haven't seen that show yet.
Better hurry, because it's going to end in a day or two.
I need to see it on Saturday. I've been favorably impressed with Mr. Fitzpatrick.
We have too.
I think that he is, he may not have the classic training of a city manager, but he's got some leadership instinct and leadership style that I think differentiates himself from the past city manager.
I think he's a nice man.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's a good guy.
Good guy. I would like, as a citizen of Oshkosh, I would personally like to see the next city manager, him or her, whoever, have a bit more community development tool set in his or her holster, because I think that is truly that is the forward-looking skill set for this city. And you know, when Northwestern comes calling for questions about redevelopment projects or riverfront redevelopment, I hope our future city manager, whoever it is the one looking down the river, down the road, and able to explain in great detail what we're doing, why we're doing it, what the private kick-in is for it. To be a true expert on community development, I think that's going to be vital for Oshkosh.
On the other hand, Fitzpatrick is a person's person, and he has that ability to get people to work together, which is also a high asset to have for a city manager.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have been very impressed,
Yeah.
and we did ask the question if he'd be interested in the position, and he was very coy, to
That's a
say the
good word.
least.
Didn't say no.
Yeah.
Well, I think that because we asked him a few different times,
Yes,
and
we
I
did.
think in the end he said that it's possible that he would be
Yeah,
interested.
I
in
took that as he was thinking about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So, but no, I couldn't agree with you guys more. I think he's just doing a wonderful job, and you certainly spoke about that in one of your recent columns, and your most recent column, you talked about the city council kind of violating the spirit of the open meetings law a little bit, and had mentioned some things that acting city attorney Lynn Lawrenson has expressed some concern about, and now she has this past week officially in a letter to the council expressed those concerns. You know, it seems like during council member statements maybe they are taking things a little bit to the extreme as far as what they can and can't be doing.
Well, Alex and I have a good-natured disagreement about this because Alex, well, you can tell him what you think.
Are you going to repeat what you said the last
Well, I
time?
said it on your show before.
Yes, I know. I
said
thought- yeah.
Councilor comments should go, and
Yeah.
I don't think that robs our city council
No.
of commentary or voice or force of action. I mean, I think they can, if they want to resolve to do something, you write a resolution and say, I resolve that we do this, and the city council says yes or no, and that's your comment, that's your statement, that's your service to the public, and you're showing that you're, think on your feet within the body of that meeting. And
Yeah, I think Alex and I have come closer to agreement at what that should look like. I think that, for example, if Brian Bain wanted to have a discussion about the city manager search, I think he could have put it as a resolution to direct city staff to come back with a proposal, and then you vote on that during the body of the meeting.
What about all the self-promotion that they have on various council member statements? You know, they're involved in some activity and, you know, they promote it. You know, no other body has, comments at the end of the meeting where they can just freelance. I agree with you. I think government would be better served. I don't see where they need them.
yeah, once again, it's one of those technical minutia kind of issues, and when it gets into the nuts and bolts of a city council meeting. But another big reason to do it is so the public has clear understanding going into a meeting that there's going to be action on this.
Right.
Here's your chance. If you're interested, if you're not interested, pop some popcorn and watch, Desperate Housewives or something. I don't know. But or wrong night, I guess.
Whatever else is on TV.
Whatever else is on TV. But
With
it's
the
their
writer's
opportunity.
strike going on, we don't know.
We
which-
have
which
no
one's
idea.
gonna be
It's
on.
kind of become a second council meeting, though, in a way, isn't it? You know, you finish the ball game and then you go into extra innings, and here's what the extra innings are.
That's interesting. That's a nice analogy.
Yeah, and the way they have it set up is under the current structure, there's absolutely no citizen input whatsoever. You can't
You can't.
offer some insight or some suggestions or talk to the issues that they're discussing. And those issues often go in different directions
They do.
from what's on the on the agenda of council member statements. Councilmember Esslinger a couple weeks ago had management of the Leach Amphitheater. And from looking at that, you would reasonably assume that he just wanted to discuss what happens next. Oh no, he came with a proposal to turn it over to the Grand Opera House for half a year, and where this was cooked up, I don't know. I know that he sits on the Grand Opera House board, but I think that's something that needs to be completely transparent. You don't do that deal behind closed doors. And I'll tell you what, Councilmember Esslinger was a councilman who was really upset with the bathrooms at the
Yes.
Leach Amphitheater.
Yes.
That was cooked up on the 9th hole of the Oshkosh Country Club.
Right.
Okay, he was outraged by that. Okay, so he's sitting there having coffee with Joe Furlow, cooking up a deal to manage the Leach Amphitheater, bring it before the council, and we're gonna discuss this without any notice. I mean, how do you justify that? How in the world do you justify it's not right to do it at the country club, but I can do it over coffee with Joe Furlow? To me,
Maybe it's whether
that's
Paul
just-
does it or not. Maybe that's the deal.
That's-
But you brought him up, Stu, and you wrote your column, and then there was an article written just a day or two ago about the letter that Lynn Lorenzen has sent out. And in that article, Mr. Esslinger was quoted as saying, "It's much ado about nothing." And Deputy
well, if you're one of
Mayor-
the biggest violators, yeah, that's the way you do it.
and Deputy Mayor Burke Tower didn't seem to think it was that big of a deal either. What do you guys make of kind of this lackadaisical attitude about it?
I think that's a dangerous attitude to have about the public's right to know what the city government is doing. I think that's what ends up in the district attorney's office. I think that ends up you're giving depositions to investigators, and I think you want to stay as far away as you can for the good of the process.
A lot of the and I think I know where Councilor Tower and probably Councilor Esslinger to a certain degree are coming from. They want to have the ability to ask more probing, open-ended questions. And if you want to do that, have a workshop or have a structured, moment in the meeting or after the meeting where you're going to say we're going to freeze frame here for a minute and we're going to let the public know that we're going to do some questions and some vetting. There's
Look,
time to do it.
does anyone think that there'd be council member statements if it wasn't televised?
Of course not.
I mean, look at Shirley Maddox.
Oh,
I mean, if that's not televised,
Right.
she's sitting there talking to an empty council chamber
Right.
about the gallery walk,
Right.
about the art show.
Yeah.
No, she's doing it because she knows this. And that's one area that I didn't have problems with council member statements.
Right.
Because it was information,
Right.
you know, just pure and simple commodity.
Yeah.
It was announcements.
Right.
Of course, that also, using that term could be, I guess, distorted or yeah.
I don't think it was relevant to position, but it was harmless.
Yeah, it was harmless.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you know, the comments that were offered up by Esslinger and Burke Tower, were those, you know, the general sum and substance of what they said, or were they taken out of context in some way? Or would they be saying these were taken out of context by the reporter?
Well, I think that if Councilmember Esslinger felt that he was mischaracterized, I think he would have come forward and said, that's not what I meant, that was out of context. He hasn't, and I think he demonstrates that he thinks it's not a big deal by the fact that he uses council member statements as a way of, you know, promoting an issue that he wants to see forwarded by, you know, grandstanding a little bit perhaps at times. So I think he truly believes it's not a big deal. I think I mean, he has asked for opinions on council member statements several different times. He doesn't like them when he gets them, but he keeps asking for them.
Earlier, Stu, you mentioned that you thought things were sort of complacent because people are satisfied with the city does its work and et cetera. How do you explain the lack of candidates running for common council against the three incumbents? What is that a sign of?
It may be attributable to the same thing, that they look at who's running, and certainly Mr. Esslinger and Mr. McHugh have a constituency.
Hard to beat.
Yeah, yeah, and I think people just don't see the hot button issue that's going to drive them to to run for office. Now there may be people out there passing circulation or nomination papers around that we haven't heard about yet. That's entirely possible, but it doesn't seem to be a stampede to get on the ballot this year.
Can we turn to the school board?
At your own risk, Dan.
Boy, you've really been beaten up on them. Probably with some justification. Doesn't seem to be many candidates, viable candidates, to challenge the two incumbents either. How do you explain that?
Well, I think there are going to be some
There are
candidates that emerge.
Okay.
I think you start getting the telephone calls and reading the letters to the editor and some of the conversations back and forth. I think there are going to be, and I don't think they're going to be moderate candidates that are going to try to bridge the gap between the two.
Okay.
Two
We're going to
sides.
get in and fight it on one side or the other?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think you're going to have John Daggett and possibly Mr. Didlow running. I think, and there's some others out there that have pretty much staked out their position on the issues.
You've been pretty hard on the board, and I think with some justification, but to play devil's advocate, aren't the voters getting what they wanted? Last time around, Dan Becker got 30 more votes than Karen Bowen did. They're kind of like Mrs. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde. They don't vote very much together. They personally, I think there's some animosity. So the voters, blame the voters, but don't blame the school board candidates. Another one, you guys fell in love with Wayne Troska.
Yeah.
I think your editorial said,
Yeah.
this guy is the greatest thing
Yeah.
since ethanol from corn. Or you
Yeah.
didn't say that, but
Yeah.
what has he been doing?
Yeah.
He's a mystery on the board, isn't he?
Yeah.
I don't understand his logic or anything.
I get very cryptic phone calls from him.
Do you?
Yeah. And it's hard to. I mean, it's like trying to nail Jello to a wall.
I just don't.
And I certainly, at some point want to have him come to the editorial board and sit down so we can explore further some of the things that happened. But when he ran and he was campaigning, he was data driven. Let's see the data from the survey that's going to come back on the schools, and we need to act on that, and we need to, these are the professionals, and we're going to get some information. We need to move forward with that, and that's not happened. So I think I'd like to have him sit down with us and apart from the board, and give us some clarity on what his thought process is and where he's going.
What are we going to be doing with the school in 2008? Where are they going?
Well, I've commented
Yeah.
a number of times in my columns that I think they should just pack this away. They should just pack it away until the board can decide what they want to do with the administration. Because I think there's a clear vote of some no confidence on the administration by part of the board. Now, depending on who you talk to, there's 3 that are really unhappy and really disenchanted with the current administration. There's 1 that's on the fence. They could be, and the city council established a template on how you go about changing administration.
Yeah.
And I think there's some of that at work in the background. And until they resolve that question, it makes absolutely no sense to try to move forward with school closing, boundary lines, transportation, facilities, because it's all predicated at some point on being able to pass a referendum. And I don't think, even if this board came to a 7-0 consensus on something, there's not enough trust in this community to say, we'll give you $40 million.
Be total mistrust at a 7-0 vote.
Yeah.
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 That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
So if you're Ron Heilman, are you getting your
I'm looking
resume
for
spruced
work,
up?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking for work. I really am. And he may feel that after 10 years or
Yes.
whatever he's been in,
Yeah.
in the position that it's time to move it. Now, again, you talk about education in its purest form, alternative education and opportunities for kids in the classroom. There is nobody better in my mind than Superintendent Ron Heilman. He's in the classroom, in those alternative classrooms in Oshkosh East High School. He's outstanding in that. Now, is he the man for the time to really reinvent and reconstruct the school district?
Yeah.
You'd have to say no. That he's not moving the board forward.
Can I back up one second?
Sure.
Just to a more general observation on the lack of candidates question, because I think it does sort of it touches both school board and city council here in Oshkosh. I really think that for too long now, the community has gotten in the habit of electing personalities as balance, counterbalance, and it's sapped that very same community of real ideas. And I know that sounds pie in the sky, but that's what I think why there's not a lot of candidates stepping up. Who's got any ideas or any gumption to step forward with an idea and say, I think we need to do this? And I don't mean fire somebody, or I don't mean not do something. I mean do something new, bring something to the table that we need to do this as a rally round the community project. I mean, when's the last time anybody's done that?
I think it's sad. I think a school board candidate should say, I want to move above this. I want to be a person who can move us in a new direction and try to get the board to work together. I'm not going to go in there and be pitted on one group or another. I'm going to be above that. But who are they?
And I think the same. There's that same lack of that mentality on the city council
I think
level.
there is. Yeah.
Everybody, or many people, I fear, see chaos when really all they should be seeing is great opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's turning a new page, actually in both races, and no ideas.
Development, economic development.
Yeah, that's 3 pages. No.
Well, Access Acquisition Group. I know that Jeff Bollier had. Is it Bollier or Bollier?
Bollier.
Okay, all
Bollier.
right. I want to pronounce it like the French would. He recently wrote a column on about the grumbling and the disappointments, and I'm part of that grumbling and disappointments. But I think my grumbling, I know where it's predicated on, and I think a lot of people out there have the same foundation for their grumbling, and that is that even though economic development around the state is suffering a little bit and struggling somewhat, my disappointment here is that Access, Tim Rickers from Access stood before that council several months ago and said, we got people ready to sign on the dotted line for tenancy in this office building. They're just waiting for your blessing. They're just waiting for your approval. And with some councils, feeling a little bit, like maybe we shouldn't do this, they got the approval. And we still, several months later, have yet to break ground. Mm-hmm. We have yet to hear the name of one tenant going in that building. And so my grumbling is coming from the perspective of, where we misled a little bit.
Well, I'm sorry, Stu.
Go ahead.
I mean, I still have high hopes for that project.
I think everybody does. The problem technically was, I believe this, I think I've understood this better in the last couple months, that Access did have a mainline tenant, and then had the city council's blessing, and then Access didn't have the city's council blessing because the city council rejected the city purchase of the Chamber of Commerce building, which I think if we asked everybody in the know in city government to what level of importance was that second step important to this deal, we might get a little more candor to this today.
But didn't Councilman Palmieri bring that up? Didn't he ask questions? Maybe it was something he asked privately. I don't know if he did it publicly. But, I mean, he was certainly convinced that one hinged on the other. And yet Tim Rickers never said anything like, this is the second component of what's needed here.
But look at it from the reverse side. Let's say that you're a tenant that's interested in going into that office building, that you want to expand your business in Oshkosh, whether you're legal firm, insurance firm, accounting firm, whatever it is, and you know that Access is up against a deadline to get signatures on the dotted line to break ground. What do? You negotiate hardcore with them to drive down the cost of that lease space because you've got some leverage on them. You can say, Mr. Rickers, if you want my signature on the dotted line for X amount of square footage, it's going to be at this price. Make me an offer. And that could get protracted. And sometimes somebody blinks. And if you're a high-level firm, professional firm looking for Class A office space, you're not going to take it at the first price he rolls out. And the more time that ticks off the clock, the better your bargaining position is. At some time, at some point, there's a date on the calendar where that price drops precipitously. And when it does, you'll see tenants signing up.
Enter 2008, where you got.
I was sharing with Cheryl that a statistic, REIT office buildings in this country in 2007 are down almost 20%. Office buildings is not a good investment right now.
Right.
And Access has kind of shifted, haven't they, from office building first now to at least restaurant, hotel, equal, or maybe would move ahead of office building?
I think
They're going to move ahead.
Well, I mean, this is going to, let's face it, let's be honest with ourselves, Oshkosh. What is a good investment right now in terms of the development community? I mean, let's just say it, okay? Is there any good investment out there?
It's a tough
Condominium
market.
market? I mean, it's a tough market. Does that mean you quit? Does it mean you give up and say, we're not going to do anything for 5 years, a decade? I don't know. Maybe the president can tell us what's going to happen here. I don't know. But no, you don't quit. You do your best to vet the projects and to make sure you're going to get the best bang for your buck, especially in a community like this, which needs a lot of bangs.
The cyclical nature of the market is demonstrable by the lack of what's happening at the Pioneer.
Clearly.
Okay, if the owners of that property had money, they'd be building, because there's no more prime piece of real estate in the entire city of in the entire state of Wisconsin than that piece of property. If the money was there, they'd be building. Okay, it's a tough market. It's cyclical, and we may be at the front end of it. We may be at the back end of it. We don't know. You take a look at the subprime interest rate, monster that's out there, and it's tough. And like Alex says, do you give up? Do you do a Rip Van Winkle and wake me when the times are better? No, I think you have to push forward on it and see what happens.
I tell you, one person that might be interested would be the Menominee Indian tribe. Indian gaming casinos in this state are over $1 billion. Have a Chief Oshkosh casino on the river where Chief Oshkosh came in the beginning.
There have been balloons floated like that in even in the few years that I've been here, and it's always been very carefully released through the public, and sort of whispering campaigns have begun about land purchases and proper locations, and the initial reaction has always been not one of great confidence.
Give them a 20-year lease and ask for 15-20% of their profit?
Are you endorsing this idea here on
I'm
Ion
just saying
Oshkosh?
that. I'm just saying explore that.
Are you going to start a petition drive?
No, I'm not. I absolutely swear on this stack of questions that I will not be leading any, But I think you said explore all possibilities. Maybe the Menominee Indian tribe would call them into your editorial board meeting.
I think you'd have to do a cost analysis on it, because you know, they wouldn't be paying property tax because it'd have to be reservation land, and so you lose that component of it. So does the lease that you enter into with the agreement, does it pay off or make it balance? I think there's a lot, and then you've got the social aspect of.
Sure, I know.
Of,
We got a lot of bars, but we don't want a casino.
Well, I mean, you look at a development like that purely as catalyst.
Yeah.
That, you know, would it spin off other things?
You don't have to be have two eyes to drive around Minnesota and Wisconsin, and what's the busiest place in every town you drive through, and it's all the cars at the gaming
Yeah,
casinos.
yeah, that's true.
It's reality. No, I'm not endorsing. I'm just throwing it out.
Well, at the last council meeting, as we taped this show, Tony Palmieri had suggested, you know, coming up with a backup plan in case, you know, the access acquisition group thing falls through. You know, that was sort of quashed a little bit by other members of the council as well as Jackson Kinney. But, you know, do you think that we need to kind of start thinking about that? And if for some reason this falls through, or even if it doesn't, because I don't think it's going to fall through.
See, I think when you talk about a backup plan, you're talking about a race to the bottom. You know, what can we put in there that we're going to be able to do, and is going to be an amusement park, a go-kart track? Is it going to be, you know, passive green space? And I don't think you want to take that step right now. I think you want to. I mean, you take a look at the track record of the Access Group and Tim Reichers. You take a look at the money that they're putting in the equity, which is something that the Five Rivers people never did. And I think you give them the widest possible latitude, because otherwise you're going back and starting from scratch. And you're looking at something less than what you want down there. So I don't think there's any real reason until deadlines pass, until Access comes forward and says we just can't do it. You know, we're sorry. I don't think a backup plan makes sense right now.
I don't know an economic plan that Tony Palmieri has ever been for. And I've known him for 11 years.
Yeah.
I mean, and so you'll be really interested to see, you know, if he came up with what his backup plan would be, because all of the economic development plans that have come through this city, he's been opposed to every one of them.
Yeah.
I said this on your show, I think, before, too. The thing that consistently bothers me, and I wish all it would take is a sort of change of attitude in our community development department and by the professionals that do work here and do a great job for the city. The message on most of this redevelopment, when it comes to public, needs to be Riverwalk. And I'm starting to sound like a broken record. He's probably getting sick of me saying it, and he probably thinks I'm getting way too over the top on this. But, you know, that's why we're doing this stuff, in addition to growing tax base and reclaiming ugly, blighted land. We are trying to build and regain a Riverwalk for
Public
us,
access,
for
yeah.
public access. There's going to be a park, ladies and gentlemen, in the city of Oshkosh, a linear park lining the north side and the south side of the Fox River. You'll be able to walk it. It will be lighted. Hopefully, it will be safe. It will be encourage more, you know, more activity along our riverfront, because right now you can't really walk along much of it. There's a lot of private property that's crumbling concrete and chain link fence, and that just ain't cool. So the reason we're doing a lot of this redevelopment work is to take back our river. And I almost wish they'd have a campaign called Take Back Our River to remind everybody that the reason we have Tim Rickers and Access at the table is because they've got investment cash and energy and interest, and we've got a Riverwalk we want to build too. So that's a big part of the conversation that's just missing these days.
And there are missing parts where they can't complete it because of private ownership of some of that land.
But they already have, in many cases, they're working on getting commitments from those people to understandings when they buy the property and when they work on redevelopment plans and when they enter into TIF agreements that, you know, in exchange for the support you'll be getting financially from the taxpayers of Oshkosh, you're going to give them unfettered access to their riverfront. That's pretty cool.
When we talk about mixed uses and so forth, do either of you think that there's some merit, and we can beat up on Paul Esslinger as we have, and that's justified too in a lot of cases, but you know, I do think that one of the good ideas that he has presented over the years is a Bay Beach type park here in Oshkosh. That thing in Green Bay is so doggone successful. I mean, it really is, and it's been there forever. You know, could we have something like that on a smaller scale here? I mean, what if something were to be worked out with Decade Properties and put it over on Keeney Island where the Pioneer Inn is currently, you know, a smaller scale Bay Beach type park?
Well, the more intriguing idea to me is the thought, the concept, and there's some movement on the idea of a waterfront museum center that would. There's one in Burlington, Vermont, and Mary Hiles did a piece in the newspaper about it. And there is some support for that. But I think, your point is, what can we put down there that's going to draw traffic, put people into downtown Oshkosh and use the riverfront? And I think that when you talk about the mixed use, I don't think we fully explored everything from start to finish, from Lake Butamore all the way down to the mouth of the of Lake Winnebago. So yeah, I think incrementally you have to look at some of those things and figure out, do they fit in, and what do they end up doing for the community in terms of putting foot traffic in the downtown area that's going to generate money spent.
I don't know if it's. I agree with them, and I think what Councilor Esslinger is getting at is something many people in Oshkosh would agree with. There is a lack of affordable, enriching, active family stuff. There's lots of events. There's lots of open, passive public park space. We've got the zoo, which people like or don't like. But when it comes to like a more tactile kind of, hop on the rides, that sort of thing, or that sort of thing, there isn't, I guess, a lot of that stuff. Maybe I'm overlooking some things, but he's right. He's touching on a pulse of the community that's there. That we need more family fun. And I just don't know if the riverfront is the right place for it. I don't mean to sound snobbish or anything like that. It probably does sound snobbish, but I don't know. I just think that riverfront for decades ahead could really be supercharging value for the community in more valuable ways, putting money in our pockets, helping defray tax base. I don't know if an amusement park or something like that would be the right fit there, but definitely someplace in Oshkosh, that's a great idea. And in fact, I would encourage him to work with OAEDC on a more commercial retail end and see if there isn't something we could get like that. More of like a, what does Appleton have? It's I've been there before with my little brother and other people. Indoor laser tag and games and that sort of thing.
The Children's Museum.
Or a Children's Museum. Children's Museum.
Well, they've got all of those things.
Yeah, and those are the things I think he's really talking about deep down. The lack of that family enriching activity alternatives.
I think as you talk about these topics, and we've kind of jumped around a little bit. I think one of the overarching themes is that 2007 is going to go down as the year of the unfinished business in Oshkosh. Whether it's the school district, whether it's a city manager, whether it's Park Plaza Hotel, the 100 block. And that may sound a little bit negative, but the other side of it is that means that there's business to be finished in 2008, which means that there's great promise there, there's great opportunity, and if we're sitting here a year from now still talking about unfinished business, and we haven't crossed these things off our checklists, then I'd be concerned. But I think the fact that there's opportunity out there, and it's just, we just need to finish the job, get it done.
Yeah. But you opine all the time for leadership, and that's clearly the key to whether these failures in 2007 will be achieved in 2008. And if you look around, candidates not running for offices.
Look at here's the deal. Everybody wants to be part of a winner. They want to be on a winning team. You get a city manager in here that's a winner and has some successes. You watch the level of candidates that'll become getting on the ballot because they want to be part of a winning team. I mean, nobody wants to, everybody thinks that if I get on the council and things start going south, do I want to be part of that? No. I think there's some feeling that let's see what happens, and maybe I want to be part of it if it looks like we're going to finish some of these projects.
It's a strong biblical theme to put on a new city manager. He may do nothing for 6 months because he's never been here before and he needs to.
But I think you can do nothing and be productive about it. By building coalitions, by reaching out to segments of the community that feel disenfranchised, by creating a big tent that everybody's welcome. We want to work with everybody. First 6 months, maybe that's what the city manager does, and it looks like he's doing nothing, but he's laying the foundation. And I think people would welcome that in this city.
The next city manager, he or she, I think, should be looking at Oshkosh and going, what an opportunity. Yeah. And that's not just, a ray of sunshine and just speaking positively. That's the honest to gosh truth. I mean, you've got a riverfront full of blank redevelopment slates. It's canvas. The community is a canvas, and it is aching for a leader who's willing to step forward and say, check this out. I got a vision for the community. If you don't like it, understood. But if you follow me, and if you work with me, and if when we do this thing together, Oshkosh can really redefine itself, and maybe 2008 is the starting point.
Well, good point. Good point. Dan, you wanted to say a couple of things.
Yeah, this has been your third appearance as print news journalism people with television people, and I think it's been a really positive experience for Cheryl and I. I think we've learned from you. I think you have made suggestions which you've carried through. One of the ones, Stu, you made last time was about listing the vacancies on city committees, and you've done that. And I wanted to thank both of you. I think there is cooperation and a learning process, and we read your things and we get some of our questions. I think we may feed you on a few ideas, but I just want to say that I just think it's been and I hope we continue this for 2008, because there is a lot of unfinished business to do. So that's my final comment for 2007.
Well, and I wasn't sure what you were going to say,
Yeah.
but I certainly echo those. I mean, Stu, you and I, for a long time, it was like oil and
Well,
water.
I can show you some columns he wrote about me that are exactly friendly.
Well, and I think
Have an equal opportunity as commentator.
I hear you.
and I think we still do disagree in some areas, but it's I think we've lost some of that venom that maybe we had for each other, and the disagreements are now more good-natured, and I enjoy these shows. They're always fun for us, and
Yeah, I
so
think you're both insightful and add a lot to the program.
Well, I think a lot of any insight we offer is largely because I think the Northwestern's done, and I'm not trying to just pump our business, but we think we've done a lot better job of opening our doors up, opening our minds up, making sure that the community has uses its newspaper as a megaphone for itself and not just for guys like us. Got a long way to go probably in many respects, but it's a noble pursuit and it's necessary these days, especially in the 21st century.
Sure, that's true. Just very, very quickly, one of the things that we are seeing is a police chief who is trying to make a much more active role, and I'm assuming that your take on that is pretty much the same.
It is very much the same. We're, I think it's safe to say, editorially, just as a member of the community, heartened by his approach.
Yeah, he's got a big job in front of him.
Yes,
no
he does.
question about
Yep.
it. And I think that his approach to law enforcement is neighborhood based, and it reminds me a little bit of when Giuliani was the mayor of New York, and stomp out the graffiti, get the jaywalkers, stop it before it starts. And I think he's of that mind, and I think that from the discussions that our editorial board has had with the chief, we're highly optimistic that he's going to be able to make a dent on crime in Oshkosh and quality of life in Oshkosh.
All right,
30
wonderful.
burglaries at the end of the year, though, is a big challenge.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
got
it
work
is.
to do.
Yes, he does.
Although those 30, I think the number we had is there's something like 25 of them or 24 of them
solved.
that have been
Really?
solved.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
So that's good.
So,
They
That's
got
good.
guys in jail.
All right, very good. Well, thanks to both of you very much for
Thank
being
you.
Thank
here.
you.
And this is the first show in the new year, so happy New Year to all of you at home. And as always, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.